afternoon. It feels so good to be back. It's my fourth Lead Today, Shape Tomorrow conference, which makes me extremely excited. And I also love the fact that the venues become bigger and bigger every year I come back. So that's also kudos to Lead Today or to the Female Founders team. Yes, today we're going to talk about mental health. So I think everybody should stay because it's such an important topic. I'm beyond excited to have a female-only panel, which is also, very important. Big hands or a big applause to Andrina, to Lily and Cosima. If I'm being very honest, Cosima, you arrived quite, sharp on time, and the first thing that she told me was the hustle is real. As I was on a panel last year, talking about the hustle culture with Felix, who was also, you saw him right on the panel beforehand, I thought I could give you all some context because everybody talks about the hustle culture, but nobody really knows what we are actually talking about. So last year I did some research and I still found it on my laptop. Just let me give you some information about it. The term actually comes from a hip-hop song. And it was mainly about a guy, a so-called hustler, exploiting others, making money through drug dealing, and that's why he called himself a hustler. So every day I'm hustling. Something that is pretty toxic, as you can see, and something that we should actually not use in terms, or when we talk about a working atmosphere, that should keep us all sane. The term hustle culture in the workspace stands for an environment that places an intense focus on only productivity, ambition, and success, with little regard for rest. As we have all something in common, we're all women, and we are all founders. You are all founders. Maybe we start the first round by a short definition of how do you define success personally? Maybe you want to start, Andrina?
Sure. I would define success as a feeling of contentment and reassurance.
Beautiful.
So it matters what happens, you know that you're on the right track.
So for me, success is having an impact. So this is, whether it's impacting one person's life or many people's lives, so it's really about having impact, positive impact.
For me, success is having that peace of mind that I know that I worked hard and made my life and also the lives of others better, healthier, or smoother.
Yeah, we heard a lot about impact. For me, it's the same actually. I already founded 2 companies, and for me, always impact was or is the main part. So for me, the vision right now for us is to put a mentor in every woman's pocket, and this is like, I will work as long as this is like until this happens, basically.
Thank you very much. What I think very interesting, even though we live in a patriarchal capitalistic system, none of these founders talked about the financial success, right? And I walked around a bit and asked other women and also men how do they define their success, and some of them said freedom, having an impact, being able to work but not work in a way, right? So I think it's very, very crucial to redefine business or success, on this panel, essentially when it comes to mental health or the status of our, kind of mental health. Andrina, you call yourself an embodied consciousness pioneer. What is it?
I figured you would ask me that. I'm Andrina, I'm an author, I'm a presenter. People also call me an inner travel guide, and I teach embodied consciousness. And if you wonder what that is, I would say that it's an antidote to what you say is the hustle culture, to the mental and emotional stresses that we all feel in this interconnected and increasingly unstable world that we live in. And what it does is it's a perception shift so that you end up living from a place within you. It reconnects you with a place within you, which is the body, which is actually your greatest friend. And we don't ever think about that because most of us live from our minds. And our minds are what is the problem. That's what causes the mental stress and the emotional stress, because you're living from what people are actually, how they see you, as opposed to actually living from within you out. And so that is really embodied consciousness, is that you're actually living from this place. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does make sense. One of the things that you mentioned or also wrote on your website was, life is simple once you reach the ultimate destination yourself. Is there something you as a founder, you had a lot of success even in the public field, you were an author, TV presenter, how to stay with oneself when shit hits the fan?
Well, I can say I didn't learn it from being that. Some of my greatest actually successes, as you said, when I was on television, I can say I was not living embodied consciousness. Although I was successful, this was actually learned through a 20-year process, and that's why I'm sharing it with everyone, because I see a lot of people being stressed because of this. So it's as I said, it's a shift of actually coming home to yourself and reconnecting with this inner sanctuary within you. So I say I see so many people with social media, or even when you say impact, oftentimes that's coming from the outside in. Because what happens if you don't make that impact? This is not about manifestations. What happens if you can't manifest anything? Well, then you're punishing yourself because you think you might be doing something wrong. Well, in fact, you are the gift. What happens is that it's this shift so that you're actually living from within you. And so therefore, it realigns you with yourself so that you're giving who you are out to the world. And your work is part of that, but not everything of that. And that is what makes the impact.
Yeah. It's actually something that goes very well with what you just said. You founded Her1, a company that is basically focused on women's health, but also like health in general. Something that you just said would really, it sounded quite spiritual, and it doesn't. For some people, maybe. But I think when it comes to women's health or female spirituality, etc., essential like mental health, right? I think there's a lot of taboos. How do you cope with those taboos? What do you see in your everyday sort of work life, and how do you cope with them?
Yeah, there are a lot of taboos and stigmas around women's health. I mean, there's typically the female health data gap, that a lot of medications that we use on a daily basis was tested on male bodies, even down to female hygiene products were not even tested on female bodies. Artificial blood was used for hygiene products, so it's insane, right? So, and it's not so long ago that all these companies, all the big corporates are still, they're still doing that in the 21st century. So with Her1, the mission is really to break those taboos by, breaking them step by step. So we always say, or actually our CMO, shout out if you're watching. So our CMO, Laura, she always says baby steps, but a lot of baby steps. So this is actually like an internal credo that we have. We're not going to change the world, tomorrow, but with every baby step that we're doing, we might. And if not, we might, pave the way for the next generation of founders doing so. So, I see a lot of potential. And then the thing or the biggest taboo, I would say, is not talking about things like female health-related things. I think not long ago, everything around menstruation or the menstrual cycle or hormones were like, oh, no, don't get me started. Even doctors were like, oh, yeah, something with the hormones. So that was not taken seriously until now.
Still
even.
not. Yeah. We just saw it in the Deutsche Bundestag when endometriosis just, was not worth some million, of spendings, of public spendings. little or baby steps. I saw Lily doing this kind of, yes, I agree. I think we were talking about mental health really, but also health as such is a topic that nobody really wants to talk about. Well, unless you are a patient or you realize that you will be a patient in the future. How do your baby steps look like, and how do you approach people in terms of like really, I mean, think about your health, and you know, you only live once and have one body that you should take care of?
Yes, definitely. Maybe to give some background. So I was a heart surgeon before I ended up quitting and starting Health Caters. And for me as a doctor, my main focus or my main thoughts about health was basically the absence of disease. So, you know, but there's so much more than not being sick that goes with health, whether it's our mental health, our social health, like all of that. And I realized, okay, we are actually not doing much for our health, especially when we're feeling fine. Like when we don't have symptoms, we don't go to the doctor and we don't check. And that's actually a big problem because these people may or may not end up with a chronic illness that could be prevented. And this is what we're trying to do at my startup. And we realized very early on that a lot of people rejected this idea. So health was kind of something that should stay at the hospital, it should stay with the doctors, and it shouldn't be, you know, about you, it shouldn't be in your hands. And it was a really hard path, lots of baby steps for sure, to really try to convince people like, hey, you know, you don't drive a car without a dashboard. Why do you do your health without knowing your parameters, without knowing how you're actually doing internally, like not the things that you see? So through a lot of talks, through a lot of awareness, we kind of try to shift that and make sure that people do actually understand the importance of knowing your parameters, of knowing how your health is going, and you know, what path is it taking? Is it on the right track? Is it not on the right track? Yeah, so basically, yeah, that's what we're trying to accomplish, and to really make healthcare and health more graspable for the individuals.
Thank you. Cosima, we talked, or I think it's the third or fourth panel that we have, you know, are allowed to have or experience together. Something that, or one question that you told me made you think, that I sent you in preparation of the panel, was, Natasha, if you're asking me how to not burn out or how to stay sane as an activist, but also entrepreneur, I don't know what to say. Well, here's the question.
Thank you.
You're very welcome.
I think we heard now a lot about solutions, but I just want to be really real that it is not that easy. I think when you're an entrepreneur, and also especially when you're a female entrepreneur, when there are a lot of challenges that you also have to overcome that, yeah, maybe other colleagues don't have to overcome. It is hard, and it is also, I don't have the recipe for not hustling. For me, actually, we just talked, I just came from another event. After this, I go to another event. So I think what we just can't forget is, as startups, we are in current competition internationally. So when we talk here about it is important to just work 40 hours and have 5 weeks of vacation every year, it's just not realistic if you're in a competition internationally. So for me, it's really more about understanding what I need to balance it all. And for me, it's more like stuff like what I found out. What helps me is to think like, okay, it's a marathon and not a sprint. If I don't stay healthy, then my impact is less. My vision is, or my goal is a high impact. And because I want that, and because I want this long term, I have to stay healthy, because it doesn't help anybody if I just have impact tomorrow. So that helps. And also something that I try to tell my team also is, it is okay to not always be on. And I'm a big fan of deep work. And I also tell my team, if I don't reach you on Slack, that's fine. If it really burns, I call you. But everything else, like, just answer when you have time. And I think this is also really important for me, because it's a totally different way of working if you're in the topic and you don't content switch all the time. And I think this is something that in our time is the biggest challenge, because we're always on LinkedIn, on Instagram, on email, on Slack, everywhere, always everybody can reach us all the time. And I think this is what then feels like hustle, even though it could be way less stress if we would focus.
So what I hear from the first kind of round we did was it's very much about awareness, also self-reflection in a way, and sometimes also having sort of this, and I'm looking at you, Andrina, this kind of not only secret garden and a recipe to really stay sane, but also this kind of maybe a moment where, again, I repeat myself, shit hits the fan and you really have to start rethinking how, or redefining success. Maybe you want to also share your story and what made you rethink and then also found a company in this field.
Absolutely, I'm very happy to do that. I actually ran 2 startups. So I was a BBC World presenter. I ran 2 companies that were media international companies. I also had an events organization company for 16 years. And secretly, I worked for 16 years with an amazing spiritual teacher, and I kept it to myself. And it was working very closely with her for 2 months a year that I saw thousands of people shift within themselves. And it gave me this perspective, but I kept it within me. I didn't need to share it with anyone. I did it also to help others. And then 5 years ago, I got a cancer that was life-threatening. At the same time, it was also disfiguring because it was on my face. And at the same time, I lost all my money. So that's one of those, what you say, I call it a cosmic kick. And suddenly it says, you know, and also when I'm fine, luckily, I've always been taking care of my health. But I said, you know, this is on my face. What am I not facing? You know, I said, because every time I look into the mirror, I'm going to see what happened to me. And it made me realize that what I was doing, helping others, I'd actually never applied to myself. So I can really understand what you're saying about that. And so I sold my companies. I wrote my second book that was sitting on my soul for a decade. And I decided to dedicate myself to sharing this knowledge that I have within me because I realize that it can help so many people. And it inspires me when I hear all of you speaking because you have such awareness. I mean, I would have died for 20 years ago of wanting to help the world. And I think that's absolutely fantastic. What I hear also is that it's a sense of, it's like a lack of trust that you are in the right place at the right time at all time, and that also trust in the world. So therefore, it allows you to achieve more by doing less. Because we always have these long lists of so many things we want to do, and now you want to wake up at 5 o'clock in the morning because you have to do your meditations before you do your smoothie, and then you have to do, you know, and then it's exhausting. I mean, even I'm exhausted thinking about it. But there's a way of living that actually, it makes you be able to do more. It automatically changes how you do everything, because just to finalize it, because I'm having to think about it myself, is that instead of defending yourself from all of this information, you go inside and then you start being a generator. And you generate out from yourself. And if anyone is curious, I'm delighted to be able to share this with anyone in the audience of how you do it. You can do it through various different things, but they're body-oriented, all of them. Does that help?
I hope so.
Okay, I hope so too.
When you just said, I was facing something, it's funny because there's one question that I prepared that says, women face a lot of.
There you go.
And as we're still at the Female Founders Conference, and I also said that, or pointed that out last year, the hustle for women is different than the hustle for men. Why? Because, you know, in general, we still do all, besides being entrepreneurs and all of that, we still are facing all the care work and all the unpaid work that we do that keeps society running. Because, let me put this straight, no venture that is founded by a man would succeed if there is not 10 women in the back supporting him in his sort of success. And this is why I think the mental health sort of approach is such an important one, because in the back you still not, even if you're not in the first row, you try to stay sane while, you know, struggling or basically hustling. so how do you face, or women face all of that? How do you basically deal with all the societal pressure also that comes for women, not only in the way we work, how we are entrepreneurs, how we look, how tall we are, what our hair color is? You know, how do you sort of tear a boundary to not get it?
Yeah, that's a good question. It's tricky. I think the main thing is that women face judgment most or oftentimes by other women, actually. So that's one. So I always say, you know, reach out to each other and, you know, lift each other up. Mm-hmm. Be the person, mentor, whatever, manager, boss that you didn't have when you were younger. Mm-hmm. So and this is a mission and also vision for my company, that we also live inside the company. So we want to empower women with our products, but we as a company have a C-level that is completely female. Not because we didn't want any male, you know, C-level, but just because those were the best people. Mm-hmm. And we are a venture capital funded startup. So name me any startup that has 3 female C-levels. 2 of them are mothers of 2. So yes, the struggle is real. But it's due to hard work, determination, and it's a conscious decision. So a conscious decision that, you know, I want that for myself, and it's not easy. It's never going to be easy, but, you know, making the decision and to commit to that decision, right? So the commitment is to yourself, actually, to stay true to yourself. And yeah, so this is what I oftentimes tell each other. So if you're a startup founder, talk to people, anyone, and ask for help, ask for support. And as you said, it takes a village. Yep. To start a company, to raise a child. So yeah, ask for help.
Yep. And I think it was Eva mentioning it on the panel beforehand, that she said, when you struggle, you don't talk about it. And I think it's so crucial that we just, the trust, the lack of trust, this kind of like, we are in this together, and you know, there's always common ground that we can find if we just want to find it, I guess. As a heart surgeon, I found something that I really sort of, I think it did not leave me shocked or anything, but it was really interesting. It says, in the 1980s and 90s, researchers began to show that individual success in life depends far more on how effectively emotions are managed than on the intellectual ability of the brain in the head. It's the so-called heart intelligence. Is this something that you, as knowing this organ so well, would also, how do you say that, sign or sort of highlight?
That's funny. I actually also read that at some point in my education.
Okay.
Yeah, so I guess to some extent, yes. I know, like me personally, I'm totally not emotional, like I'm not an emotional person in general. So sometimes it's hard for me to relate to people who do show their emotion, which I love. I actually love when people do that. So I think that sharing your emotion and having that openness and also the freedom to do so is actually crucial. Mm-hmm. Like, I don't think anybody should be bottling all of that up, because at some point you will explode. So actually at in our company, we are very transparent in terms of how we feel, how we think, how our employees think and feel. And we actually really want people to share these things, because I also think it's like, you're not healthy if you just bottle everything up to yourself. So both me and my co-founder, we're a female founding team, are very aware of this fact and that it's important. So we actually really encourage people to be emotional, which is also normal. Like, everybody's emotional. And we actually got one of the feedback points that we got after I think we raised our pre-seed round, was that we were literally stone-faced as we signed stuff, and the notary guy was like, why are you guys not celebrating? Like usually when startups sign this, they're smiling and celebrating, and that's when we realized like, wow, we're just bottling all this stuff up, and it causes stress, it causes like all sorts of physical symptoms, and that's when we said to ourselves like, no, there's no bottling up of emotions. Like emotions should be there. They're also, I think, a part of being successful. Like you need to be happy and sad. Like this is all, you know, a roller coaster that belongs to, I think, being a founder.
Very good point. I couldn't agree more. I do believe still that the mindset that we're facing, and how many women of you, or how many, all of us have heard the sentence, well, she's quite hysteric, you know, all the stereotypes that you get when you are emotional, oh, she's crying again. You know, I think it's also the way of how we talk about feelings in society as such, about mental health. Cosima, how do you, well, you are in the sort of feminist field too, right? Where, well, things get emotional sometimes. How do you deal with your emotions, and how do you try to stay sane in this field too?
Good question. Well, now we heard a lot about like the challenges that maybe women face differently in the world than men. And this is something that I'm 100% certain is completely true, and we also know that. And also this is actually also partly the reason why we built the product that we have right now, the Ada app, because we know there are different challenges at work, we're focusing on work, that women face. And I really do believe that, I often hear this, the system has to change. Nobody really really tells me what the system is, because I think we're all the system. And I really believe that if something changes, it has to be the people who have the biggest need of something to change. And this is, when it comes to feminism, of course, the women. So what we are doing with the Ada app is basically also giving everybody the tool to stay sane in a society that is not built for them. So I'm trying to apply all the tips that I get from the Ada app, basically. But it is really about understanding where you are in society, understanding who you are, and understanding what you can change to in this society, and then also in your radius. Because, for example, we do know that deeper voices are more trustworthy. So we have a biological disadvantage. How do we deal with this, for example? For example, in the workspace, this is a big topic. But then, of course, on the other hand, is also there are sometimes not the doors open for us that we want to go through. So I believe that we...
May I ask you, how does it affect women? Like, you talk to a lot of women in the work field. How does those kind of stereotypes affect women mentally? Because we're talking about well-being. Do you see them being left behind, like, I don't know what's happening, what is wrong with me? Is it something that they take on as their own fault in a way?
Totally, but this is also what society tells us often. Sure. So something that we just see way more with women than with men, and we base all what we do on studies, of course, is that imposter syndrome and everybody stalling these things that we probably all know is more common with women. I mean, this is not something that you're born with. You're not thinking you're an imposter when you're born with. So what we try to focus on, and what also I try to focus on, is how to overcome these things that are put on you during your whole life. So it's not something that you are, it's something that people tell you. So especially imposter syndrome, for example. When I started my first company 6 years ago, I told myself, okay, I just take every challenge. I always say yes to every challenge, even though I don't feel ready. And this was great at the time, but now, of course, when we talk about hustling, it is also, of course, overwhelming, because it's something that, of course, stresses you more if you're not ready, if you don't feel ready for it. But of course, it's the growth zone. It's a growth mindset, of course. And I think growth doesn't come easy. So I would differentiate between hustle in a sense that it is unnecessarily stressful, and hustle in a sense, or we maybe have a better word for that, that brings you and your business into the next level.
Just keeping the time in mind, I would do 2 more sort of rounds. One of them, because you said something about unlearning, like unlearning that the imposter syndrome is something that is not, serving you anymore. Anything that you had to unlearn when it comes to your well-being? You learned a lot, spirituality, but what was it that you had to unlearn?
Just about everything.
Okay.
What I would like to say, if I can add about emotions, that I think might help everyone, is that you're not your emotions. As simple as that. You're deeper than your emotions. Emotions are just things that act as compasses. We needed them. If an animal comes in, you need to have the emotion that says, oh, I might be eaten. But you don't have to live with that, and you don't have to believe that you're the emotions. Emotions are energies, and they're meant to flow through you. So one of the reasons that you're not living from your body oftentimes is because it's filled with all of these unexpressed emotions, or these emotions that you say, oh my goodness, that's not part of me, especially like anger, because women aren't supposed to feel anger. So a lot of times or that we self-judge ourselves about those emotions. And I was stopped in the U-Bahn, in the underground yesterday, and I had 4 people surrounding me and aggressive because they said that I didn't have my ticket when I did. And, I was able to leave, but it was a very 15 minutes of stress, and I did actually doing an Instagram about saying, I'm walking it off. I'm walking it off. So, but allowing yourself to feel the anger, and then it flows out, because if not, it keeps with you. And then you throw it unconsciously at the next person. So therefore, I had to unlearn a lot of self-judgment about what I was supposed to be and how I was supposed to look and what a woman is supposed to do. And then suddenly realizing that I'm actually deeper than that, and I'm wearing the body of a woman. So therefore, it allows you to deal with the world, essence to essence. And then a lot of these things about gender and age and color and all of that disappears. It just disappears. And it makes life much simpler.
Sue, something that you had to unlearn.
I couldn't agree more. I think, yeah, it's exactly that. Expressing your feelings. Like, oftentimes, I got asked today, like, are you nervous doing stuff like that? I was like, no, actually I'm fine. But if I would be nervous, it actually would help me if I would just, express it, and also, like, to myself, like, yeah, I'm nervous, yeah.
And it's okay.
And it's okay, and that, expressing that alone releases the energy, actually, so the tension. So yeah, I couldn't agree more, like unlearning everything, like, yeah, as a woman, you're supposed to be a mom by 30, have 2 kids, and, stay at home and raise them, whatever, or don't, but like, just break free of all the you should be things, and try to find your own, truth and own happiness.
Lily, what about you?
For me, so I think a lot of people expect women somehow to be organized. Like, you are, like, traditionally you're responsible for your household, and like dinner needs to be ready at 6, and then you do laundry. And I also was kind of in that mindset that, like, I need to not do laundry, but like have control of like the general situation. So what was really, really difficult for me is when we had our first employees and we hired them, was to not hover over them and make sure like stuff is running the way I think, because ultimately I thought I'm responsible that everything goes smoothly. And I am, because I'm one of the founders, but I felt like that really put also a strain on my employees, because they feel like, listen, I can do this, but you're micromanaging me, or you're like telling me constantly how to do something or not to do something. So for me, it was like letting things go and seeing how they go, how they flow. Sometimes it totally came back to bite us, but most of the times it was a good learning, at least. And just learning to trust others as well, and like have them do their thing, and then just know that, in general, you're a company and you're all working for the same goal, and sometimes stuff is disorganized or is not as perfect as it should be, but that's okay.
I think there's this term mental load that a lot of people know from actually the private or the family sort of surroundings, rather than also in the workspace. It can be exactly that. If you micromanage because you can't let go, that's a lot of mental load that you take on instead of just letting it go, right? Colin, what about you? What did you have to unlearn?
I think something that I'm still learning, or still unlearn, is I often, or I think a lot of people actually, on the one hand, people tell us set boundaries, say no, don't be everybody stalling, what I already said earlier.
No is a full sentence, yeah.
Yeah, no is a full sentence. And yeah, that's nice, and it's also something that for sure I also still have to learn. And on the other hand, what I already also got in what people told me to my face is, don't be so aggressive, smile more, don't be so like, and then you're in the situation where you're like basically in between, you don't know what you are, you don't know in which direction to go, and I think this is something that I have to unlearn, and I'm unlearning it right now, to just don't give a shit.
Yeah, very good.
So, because somebody told me, actually one of my employees told me, nobody will criticize you who does more than you. And this gives me so much, because I'm thinking, yeah, that's true. I'm already like trying to do my best and trying to have a lot of impact. I'm trying to I have a company, I have employees, there's a lot of responsibility. And at the same time, people tell me how to be, but they don't run the company. So to unlearn to care what other people think.
Very good. Last round, one tool or one recommendation to all the people in the audience, women thinking about founding a company, but also knowing that their mental health is very important and crucial to them. One thing that you would recommend or basically suggest?
Don't do things as a means to an end. So in other words, when you're going to do something, do it. And then finish it, and then do the next thing. But then you're actually living in the present. You're becoming it, as opposed to always just doing it. It makes you feel much better, and therefore you can actually give much more back.
Yeah, as a person that has founded other companies before, that has failed before, that went through insolvency, don't be afraid of failure. So the odds are actually against us as founders, just statistically. So be aware of that. But even if you fail, you're gonna learn. You're gonna, stand up again and do something else. This is, I think this is my biggest credo, that even if you fail, you'll learn. So sometimes you win, sometimes you learn.
I was going to say the same thing, so now I have to think of something else. No, I would say if you are in the situation as somebody where you find a problem that is big enough to be, such a pain point for you or for people around you, that you are thinking about changing it, then I would just say, go for it. Like, I don't know how many people I had who told me, do not leave the clinic, that's absolutely dumb. And in the end, I listened, or against everybody, basically, and just went for it. Because ultimately, even if you fail, you don't fail, because it's always this amazing learning. Like, I've learned more my company's only 3 years old, but in the 3 years than I have my entire life. Like, it's just this amazing roller coaster of you learn anything from sales to, I don't know, cleaning the office, everything. So yeah, I would just say, just go for it, just try it out.
I have multiple things. I try to be quick. So the first one is deep focus. I think this is helping a lot. Try to learn more about deep focus. The other one is also failure. Don't be afraid of failure. You said actually the odds are against us, but actually as female founders, the odds are in our favor. Of course, running a company is hard, but at the same time, there are studies that show that women make long-term better decisions because we think the things through a little bit more. And the third thing is have a mentor or have people around you that you trust and that also maybe are already the version that you want to become. That helped me a lot. So I think mentoring is really, really important. And also, if you're not a founder, ask in your workplace for what you need, ask actively, because we know, for example, that 80% of women who want a mentor would never ask for one. So ask for the things you want.
Very good. One last point that I would like to add is go to therapy. Seriously, if you go to the gym to stay physically fit, I sound like the monkey from Madagascar, you know, physically fit. But honestly, you also want to stay mentally fit, no? So really, really crucial, go to therapy, see a coach, and talk to others and find people that you can trust. I think that's the main thing. And yeah, don't be afraid about what other people say. You said shit. I didn't want to repeat that bad word. Thank you so much for listening. Handing over to the moderators again. Oh, we have to leave. Okay, bye-bye.